Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum demands U.S. share of $15 billion in drug profits from convicted cartel boss. So as the Trump administration is waging this counterinsurgency on Mexican drug cartels and seizing assets, the Mexican government is demanding a cut of the drug proceeds. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Wednesday she will press the United States to turn over money seized from convicted Sinaloa cartel leader Ishmael El Mayo Zambada. Sheinbaum has argued it should go to Mexico's poorest citizens. I'm sure that's exactly where the money will end
Ishmael?
up. Call me Ishmael. If the United States government were to recover resources, then we would be asking for them to be given to Mexico. That's our drug money. Keep your hands off of it, the Mexican president is saying. And so this is the cartel boss is being sought for more than 20 years and was arrested last year, and now they are in the process of seizing assets. This is also happening, I should note, alongside the recent revelations by author Seth Harp on the relationship between Mexican drug cartels and the U.S. military and U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, which maybe we can turn to in a little bit. What are your guys' opinions on should we give Mexico the drug money, or is it ours now?
Of course he's prosecuted in the U.S., right? Like, we caught the guy. We're the ones actually holding him accountable. Claudia Sheinbaum, if you talk to pretty much any immigration expert, will tell you is probably captured by the cartel, like at least paid for them, if not actively doing policy that is helping them. So, like, where does she get off telling us what to do with the money that we seized from our investigation and our prosecution? It's none of her damn business.
Well, one of the issues is that Mexico became our largest trading partner currently. And so while we do have a tremendous amount of leverage with Mexico, they now have a fair amount of leverage on us. In fact, there's a lot of Texas oil money that depends on shared relationships with Pemex in Mexico. There's Tesla factories being built in Mexico. We're in a sort of pivot war to stop Chinese influence in Mexico and try to get them to commit more and more to our goods. And so there's the question of how much of this is a conflict versus how much is a cooperation. And are you trying to wedge Mexico off of China? And if you push them too far, will they partner there? We know Mexico's building a new canal currently that China is trying to get rights over parts of. But what do you guys think about the leverage that we have in the Trump administration's current dealings with Mexico?
I do think that it's in our national security interest to do whatever we can to stymie Chinese influence in Mexico. I do think that the Monroe Doctrine has value, right? I think that the rest of the world should kind of stay out of this hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere. China will do anything they can to attack the United States in whatever way they can. I truly believe that they're an adversary. So anything that they're doing in conjunction with Mexico, any kind of business dealings, they're not just doing it because they're looking to make some money from Mexico. They're doing it because they're looking for access, or they're looking to be able to access the United States, whether it be by working with cartels, sending in the precursors for fentanyl, or whether it be sending Chinese, young men up through the Darien Gap, from South America through the Darien Gap and up into the United States as illegal immigrants. China's looking to do everything that it can to have as much access and influence over the United States as possible. And I think the United States has to do everything that it can to prevent that and stymie China's efforts, which up to and including making sure that Chinese students can't come to the United States. I saw a tweet today about the 600,000 Chinese students that Donald Trump had made a remark about, and the White House just pulled that back. They said, this ain't happening.
Well, kind of.
What was that?
Kind of.
Please go on, please.
Yeah, well, they said that it was 300,000 over a period of 2 years, which is basically an extension of current policy while they negotiate with China. But the number's still too damn high, right? Like, we should stop all imports of Chinese students until we can figure out what the hell is going on, as Trump would say, maybe in his first term. Not to get too far off the border topic, but Chinese students who are not connected to the CCP who study in the United States literally look at class rosters to make sure that there are no other students in the class with Chinese names because they're worried about getting spied on and having the things they say reported back to the CCP, which obviously can come down on their families. So even though they're studying here, like they're still within the clutches of the Red Dragon.
That's a point that I was making the other night. Like having Chinese nationals here in the United States, they are going to report back to China. There is no Chinese national that's here in the United States that has family in China that China's not going to use their family to get that person to comply and do something. That's just not going to happen. China has no problem throwing your granny into jail to get you to do some action against the United States.
I had dinner with a Uyghur Muslim years ago during Trump's first term, and he was talking about how he was speaking out about the concentration camps and basically got a call from his family telling him that his mother had been disappeared.
Yep.
And they would leverage that every time that he spoke out. They would tell him, well, you'll never speak to your mother again. And, you know, if he was quiet for a while, he'd get a phone call or there'd be some news report that she was still alive. So yeah, anyone who's got family in China or wants the ability to travel back and forth, like you are under their thumb, even if you don't like them.
Yeah. So to think that there's going to be some different policy out of the CCP when it comes to Mexico, I think that's an error, and the United States needs to act accordingly. You know, we have massive influence on Mexico. No matter how much Scheinbaum wants to run her face and say, "Oh, we're our own independent country," and blah blah blah, like. The United States is still the United States and has massive leverage power, whether it be soft power or, if necessary, you know, direct military power.
Well, and it looks like they have, and it looks like there's members of the U.S. military in boats off the coast now, preparing potentially for incursions if necessary.
Yeah, and so whatever we can do to stymie China's influence in Mexico, I think is good. And Mexico needs to get on board with what the United States wants, because the United States is their biggest trading partner. The United States is the most powerful country in the world. The United States has the ability to really influence Mexico, and whether it be to their detriment or to their benefit, you know, and being in the good graces of the United States should be something that the United States makes clear is in Mexico's best interest.
Right.
And as for the stuff at Fort Bragg and stuff, I've not done any kind of digging into that, but I've heard stories about the possibility of, like, you know, special forces guys.
Right. Well, this is what's very interesting. So much of American power in the 20th century grew out of the oil industry, which is really centered in Texas. And Texas and Mexico share a huge amount of oil wealth, and a lot of the oligarchs from both countries went into business together. You know, famously Carlos Slim in the New York Times, the richest man in Mexico and the like. But the United States facilitated the drug trade in Central and South America throughout the 20th century to fund right-wing death squads in El Salvador, to fund the Nicaraguan Contra War, to fund revolutions all over South America. And so there's been this very long-time relationship with Mexican drug cartels, Colombian drug cartels, and the U.S. military and intelligence services. And another thing that broke today is that HBO just secured rights to develop the Fort Bragg Cartel, drug trafficking and murder in the special forces, into an HBO series, which I am very excited to see. This is from Deadline. In what it describes as a, quote, fiercely sought-after deal, HBO has nabbed the rights to develop the nonfiction book, The Fort Bragg Cartel, Drug Trafficking and Murder in the Special Forces, by investigative journalist and military veteran Seth Harp, who recently appeared on Tucker Carlson, Democracy Now!, and laid this out, also has this new book out. The book details the investigation into a string of unsolved killings in and around the Special Operations Base, revealing a network of narco-trafficking conspiracies that corrupt police abetted and the military covered up. And I'm going to read some findings from that so that folks can understand what's going on here. The scale of death at Fort Bragg is extraordinary. In the book, Harp documents 109 Fort Bragg soldier deaths in between 2020 and 2021, with only 4 in combat. So 105 out of 109 deaths occurred on the base. And they were all either murders or suicides. And he argues that they intersect with a drug running network tied to elite networks, compiling letters of soldiers involved in a wider trafficking ring, especially moving opiates from Afghanistan. There were the key bridge was a former DEA task force agent turned drug trafficker who was the bridge to the Mexican drug cartel, the Los Zetas. This was famously the same cartel that the Obama administration ran guns to the Sinaloa cartel to fight against during Operation Fast and Furious. If you remember, there was the gun running. This was what forced Eric Holder, the head of the Justice Department, to step down during the Obama administration.
No scandals besides a tan suit, though.
Unreal.
Right. And so essentially he argues that there's this relationship between the Mexican drug cartels and the Special Operations Forces out of Fort Bragg, Fort Bragg is also home to the Psychological Operations Center and the Information Warfare Center. And these are the same units that are on the ground in drug zones in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Colombia, in Mexico, in Cambodia, in Laos, and Vietnam, in the Golden Triangle. So they sit on the drugs. These drugs are used in order to fund proxy wars. Famously, the U.S. Institute of Peace, which was raided by the Trump administration when it refused to allow the U.S. government to take over the executive branch there. They bolted the doors. They kept a weapons stash in the building. The FBI had to come in and forcibly remove them. They famously, in 2023, told the Taliban to keep the drugs flowing. They said, congratulations on your new government, Taliban. There's one thing you can't do, which is get rid of the opium production in the Golden Crescent. These were the same drugs used by the CIA to fund the Mujahideen in the 1970s, when both the CIA and the U.S. military were working with Osama bin Laden and the narco trafficking squad that funded the Mujahideen and then funded ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The Biden administration told the Taliban to keep producing those drugs, and now tons of revelations are coming out about the military trafficking the drugs that they ordered foreign governments to keep flowing. And I think this is part of why you never had a designation of drug traffickers as terrorists before, because the U.S. government, especially the military and intelligence services, are in on it. It's a key part of our war funding. And I'm very excited to see how these revelations are turned into policy actions by the Trump administration. What do you guys have to think about that?
Do you think they will be?
I think it's an incredible opportunity to renegotiate the power balance with the uniparty blob as well as with foreign countries.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.